This offseason has been insane to say the least. With the new CBA getting tighter after this year, essentially making it harder to keep a big three and stay competitive, a number of teams view this year as their time to go all in on a chip before the league gets shaken up a little too much. Given the high stakes at the moment, there have been some big gambles. Some teams so far have appeared to have made off like bandits, acquiring new stars and reinvigorating existing players for a new run at the title. While a number of teams are looking great from this offseason sweepstakes, certain teams that should be in the running have looked too afraid to make any real moves, and are appearing to fall behind the curve. In some cases, these teams have seemingly only gotten worse. Given that the NBA season is starting up in a few weeks, we've decided to list 3 of the teams looking the deadliest after their offseason moves. Teams that have really taken that step up to real contender status. We've also decided to list 3 teams that are essentially the losers of this offseason. Teams that should have tried to make bigger moves and may struggle with firepower in the upcoming season. But before we hop in, if you enjoy the video, make sure to hit that sub button. We've been trying to get to 1,000 subs for a while, and every sub means a lot to us. First up, we have the Milwaukee Bucks, who have acquired Damian Lillard to form one of, if not the most deadly offense this coming year, while paired up with Giannis. Let's just face it, this team is basically unstoppable, at least offensively. Giannis will still be doing Giannis things, utterly dominating the paint with his drives and length, except now he has a certified sniper behind him, who will drop 45 on you if you don't guard him well. The biggest problem with the Bucks before was that defenders could just throw up the wall on Giannis before he gets enough speed for a proper drive, and gamble that one of his teammates misses the three-pointer that would inevitably follow. This is now a gamble that not many teams will be taking, given that Dame is the second best shooter in the game of basketball right now. And we all know he can shoot from deep. Just ask PG. So given Dame's immense gravity around the 3-line, the paint should be thinner than ever for Giannis to charge in like a bull and put the ball in the hoop. While offense looks promising, the problem for this team will inevitably be defense. Jrue Holiday, who was given up for Dame, was definitely an anchor of the defense, and losing him means a lot less security on the perimeter. Dame also isn't known as the best defender to begin with, which makes things slightly more worrying. But given that the team still has a number of capable defenders, from Brook Lopez all the way to Giannis himself, they should be alright on the defensive end while dismantling teams offensively for 130 points per night. Next, we have the Boston Celtics, who after acquiring Kristaps Porzingis earlier in the offseason have now doubled down and traded for Jrue Holiday. This immediately gives the Celtics the best looking starting 5 in the entire NBA on paper. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum will continue to do their thing obviously, but now they have one of the most unorthodox weapons in the entire NBA to pass the ball to in a 7'3" 3-point sharpshooter named KP, and have essentially filled the defensive hole on the perimeter left by Marcus Smart, who was traded away for Porzingis with Jrue Holiday. This starting 5 alone has Vegas currently considering them as the favorites in this upcoming season. The Celtics have been so close for a number of years to really making a proper run, and to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, this must be feeling like it's really their year with these 2 trades. The only issue besides the typical Porzingis injury concerns would be the much thinner depth than the Celtics are used to. The bench has some decent pieces on it, but chances are that the Celtics won't be playing a whole lot of pure bench time, and will have to throw a star or 2 out there most of the time. Otherwise, the bench is looking like it might get cooked. I'm sure the Celtics can stumble into some free agent signings or minor trades and sort the issue out. It's honestly looking pretty good for the Celtics. The last team that's looking super exciting after some trades going into this season is the Phoenix Suns. Early into the offseason, they acquired Bradley Beal for Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, and a boatload of picks. While their future may be in shambles, it's the present we're dealing with right now, and they look like a force to be reckoned with next season. Phoenix is yet another team that's been flirting with, but hasn't gone on a championship run. By the time last season rolled around, it was apparent they needed a shakeup after losing 4-2 to the eventual champions, the Denver Nuggets. Beal is definitely that shakeup. While Chris Paul is one of the best floor generals of all time, the guy's just getting too old to consistently be a top-of-the-league menace game in, game out. The Suns now have 3 premier scoring options in Booker, KD, and Beal, and any team not named the Milwaukee Bucks may struggle to match their offensive output.
Now that we've talked about all the winners in this offseason, let's talk about some losers. Starting off with the Miami Heat, who are probably the most relevant with all the Dame news, because despite Pat Riley's legendary reputation and resume, he's been kind of asleep at the wheel lately. Maybe quite literally, as it's been reported that he didn't even call Portland back in the final days before the trade with the Bucks. But as Heat fans are more than well aware of, there's been a shocking amount of star-level players that have expressed their interest in joining the Heat since they landed Jimmy Butler back in 2019. Names like Chris Paul, Zach LaVine, Donovan Mitchell, Bradley Beal, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. And with the Heat being a competitive team year over year, while also being seen as one of the premier cities to live in the NBA, it's gotta leave you wondering how they're not able to land a single one of these stars. In fact, in the 4 years since landing Jimmy, they've only made a handful of trades that involved getting Trevor Ariza, Jay Crowder, Andre Iguodala, Lowry, and a first-round pick, and some cash. And with the exception of an aged, broken-down Kyle Lowry, all of these players are no longer with the team. Miami Heat have made some really smart signings and done excellent in the draft, but even still, they've let all of that go this offseason. Sending Max Strus to the Cavs for a first-round pick, and just letting Gabe Vincent go to the Lakers for a 3-year, $33 million deal. And it's been reported that the Heat's final offer was a 4-year, $34 million deal. And this is for one of their crucial starters on the Heat during the finals run. I mean, his 23-point night on 66% shooting helped the Heat get their only win against the Nuggets, and now he's joining LeBron and AD's conversations about getting revenge on Jokic. And given the fact that they've failed to get a deal done again to bring another all-star to join Jimmy and Bam while making minor moves like adding Thomas Bryant and Josh Richardson and a few other bench guys, I think it's fair to say that the Heat may have had one of, if not the worst off-seasons this year. A close second, however, would be another team that was in the mix for the Dame trade, and that would be the Toronto Raptors, who also have a GM asleep at the wheel after making the world think that they were a genius. But at least in the Miami Heat's case, they've won a couple championships and stuck around for multiple finals appearances, unlike the Raptors under Masai Ujiri, who started out being a second-round exit team, made a couple of moves to assemble a pretty solid team, then land one of the most talented all-around players in the entire league for a season, and then instantly go back to a mediocre play-in exit team. The 2019 championship Raptors was an extremely deep team, with every single one of those players coming together at the perfect time. Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka pretty much gave their last effective seasons that year, along with Kyle Lowry, who's been on a slow decline ever since, and even younger players like Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell breaking out and contributing massively off the bench, and Pascal Siakam being in the perfect role during that playoffs, as the number 2 to Kawhi. But then the Raptors gave Pascal the max extension shortly after Kawhi left, which I mean pretty much was expected since the first day he arrived in Toronto. But anyways, the team slowly started to shed off the remaining pieces of that squad, leaving just Chris Boucher, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam as the lone members left on the Raptors from that championship season. And Pascal's made it very clear that he's not looking to go anywhere this year. Now, personally, I'm guessing this has something to do with his soon-to-be eligibility for the $285 million Supermax extension, if he makes another All-NBA team, which, let's be honest here, is all but guaranteed if he stays healthy and on the Raptors, as he wouldn't be given the same usage if he was actually on a contending team. So I'm sure that he was overjoyed that the Raptors also didn't land Dame, despite them appearing as the frontrunners leading up to the final days before the trade with the Bucks. But it's been long rumored that Masai is notoriously difficult to negotiate with during trade talks, refusing to even consider Scottie Barnes when KD was available last season, and now doing the same thing with him and Dame this year. Which honestly is very fair, as if Scottie does actually work out, then he'll dominate for years to come. And Dame, on the other hand, being a smaller guard, doesn't exactly spell longevity if you look at the history of past shorter guards in the league. But when it was also reported that he was strong-arming OG, acting like he was a prime Michael Jordan, then now it kind of starts to seem that he's overvaluing his roster, which might come from the fact that he was able to find diamonds in the rough and assemble that championship team back in 2019. But at this point, the front office needs to come to terms with how the rest of the league values their assets, or they'll risk letting players walk, just like what happened with Fred VanVleet, who had been in trade talks for the past 2 seasons and would have got a healthy return. But no, he left the Raptors for the Rockets, and the Raptors got nothing in return. And now on to the final team that's had a pretty brutal offseason. And that would of course be Daryl Morey and the 76ers, who really should be fine this year as they still do have a pretty solid roster, but it is pretty funny watching James Harden and Morey go from best friends to mortal enemies overnight. as Harden looks to force his way out of another team. But this time, some people do agree that it's actually fair, as apparently Morey had given Harden an unspoken agreement that he would give him an extension if he came over to the 76ers. But it seems that he's reneged on that agreement. Now, although Harden does have some pretty legendary tactics to get off a team, we are talking about Daryl Morey here, who sat on Ben Simmons for a year to get a solid offer, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, as it seems that Harden has already given a little bit, by first leaking that he wasn't going to the 76ers training camp, only to appear there a few days later. Now, given how competitive and talented the league has gotten, it's gotta be pretty hard for Vegas to set their over-under odds this year. Of course, it always seems like this in October, but quickly it unfolds, and we realize that teams that seem like a guarantee, like the Bucks and Celtics this year, or maybe the LA Clippers when they first brought together their all-star duo, and the Brooklyn Nets when they made their super team, who never actually make that final push to hold up the Larry O'Brien trophy, or hell, even make it to the finals. While on the other hand, underdog teams like the Miami Heat last year do pull it together and make that push. So we should be in for another great NBA season no matter what. If you made it this far in the video, give it a like. While you're down there, you might as well just subscribe because we're really close to 1,000 subscribers. And once we hit that, we'll be able to start getting paid from these videos. So hopefully we'll see you again next Sunday.